And thank you, Emily. Welcome to the Monday edition of The View From A Pew, heard here live at your local radio station at 4 o'clock every afternoon, and anytime around the world on YouTube.com. Just put in for a search The View From A Pew, and you will absolutely get us not only live, but it'll always be stored there on the cloud. Whenever I think of that, I think of Samantha Stevens' mother and Dora, her hovering like she's on the cloud. Oh, okay. All right, so very special guest today. Pastor Austin is on vacation, like this isn't the fourth one of the year. So I have Sheila Rushlaw with me, and you're going to love Sheila. She's going to be with me all this week, and we're going to talk about our regular topic of what does the Bible say about. And at least for the first couple days this week, we're going to talk about the 10 Commandments. And as what's-his-name once said, those are not 10 suggestions. They are the commandments. But we're going to do this always biblically. So you're not wondering if it's Sheila's opinion or my opinion or whoever's opinion. If it doesn't come from the Bible, I'll tell you, well, it's in the Bible, but here's what I think. Which really makes me a dum-dum. But sometimes I have to live up to my character. So, Sheila, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Been looking forward to having you on for a long time. And so, a lot of people really, well, it's a shame. In today's world, there are very few people under the age of 30 that even know what the 10 Commandments are. And that is thanks to our government schools. I know some people call them public, but they're not. They're government schools, teaching our children what we want them to know and don't know. And of course, God is nowhere in government schools anymore. For me, maybe for you too. This was on the wall in the classroom, the 10 Commandments.
It was.
Yeah, it started out with the Pledge of Allegiance and all those kind of things. But, whoops, Daddy forgot to shut off his thing. Okay. So, a lot of people just don't know him anymore, and that's so sad. I was watching Jeopardy the other day, and the question was, fill in the blank. Our Father who art in heaven, blank be your name. And nobody knew it. Nobody knew it.
Mercy.
Yeah, really.
Mercy.
All right, so today, as you said, we're going to do it Julie Andrews style and start from the beginning. And the first commandment is...
Well, the commandments are found in several places, but one of the most noted places is in Exodus 20, and they are in verses 3 through, let me make sure I know this, they are through 3 through 17. And it's interesting because the Lord gave these to the Israelites just as they were coming out of this bondage that had been over them. And none of these people had been with that group of 75 who went into Egypt under Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
Who was, oh, this is sweet, and everybody loves us, and they're going to give us some land over here, and all of these types of things. These are not those people. These are their descendants.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, Pharaoh changed, and so did the dictates of all of his power in his realm. So it's not that these people didn't know these commandments. These have been around since creation.
Yeah.
In fact, before creation. The commandments are one reason why God had to die.
Why God had to die.
Why God had to die.
Jesus on the cross.
Jesus on the cross.
Okay.
And the reason he had to get on that cross was because these commandments are not changeable even for God.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all. There's no messing with the commandments. Pope, are you listening? Oh, okay. Now, the first one is...
It's in Exodus 20, verse 3, and it says, "You shall have no other gods before me."
Okay, so I'm going to do something a little weird on this one. I want to add in the second one.
Okay.
Because to me, they're a lot alike, and maybe you
They
can
are.
help me understand their difference. Because thou shalt have no other gods but me, and the second is no idol worshiping. That's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Well, it is, but when they're talking about idols, people tend to say that an object is an idol.
Right.
Oh, this is an idol. You know, a water bottle is an idol. Your phone, mercy, mercy.
Yeah.
Many people have made the phone their idol. But the first one, the first commandment that you get here, you shall have no other gods before me.
Big G.
Yeah, big G. This is talking about I am, I am.
Okay.
And that name was told to Moses when he said, who am I supposed to say sent me back here?
Yeah.
And Christ said to him, I am that I am. And they understood that because I am is present, I am is past, and I am is future.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. But
Well,
it says, when it says, you shall have no other gods before me, you shall not worship, you shall not give your worship to anyone else.
Okay, Sheila Rushlaw is my guest today. This is View from the Pew. I'm Mac, M-A-C like macaroni. You can email me anytime, mac@theviewfromapew.com. Always love to have you tell me what you want filled in on that blank. What does the Bible say about blank? And then we'll talk about that. All right, so what I learned after Jesus mugged me was that I had many idols, and some of those idols were higher than God was.
Yes.
So that's where I get confused on no other gods, because I'll bet you dimes to dollars there's a lot of people in this world that would tell you that Facebook is their God. That's where they go to find out what the truth is. That's where they go to find out what isn't truth.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband calls it evil book.
Evil book. I like that.
He won't even sign up to it. He's like, no, that's just evil book. But you're right, Mac, when you say that the first and the second commandment are very, very similar. That first one, you shall have no other gods before me, it totally eliminates any other form of worship we could have. But then we have verse 4, and starting with verse 4, and it says, you shall not make for yourself an idol, or any likeness of what is in heaven, above, or the earth, beneath, or the water under the earth. You shall not worship them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to those thousands to who those love me and keep my commandments.
And this is part of the first commandment.
This is the first and the second.
Okay, all right. So I think about my own self. What were my idols? My house was my idol. What I drove was one of my idols. The kind of people I hung around with, the name dropping, were idols. I was never much of a clothes or jewelry snob, but anything else were my idols. And I found that I put those above a God I thought I knew. But we replace God with those idols.
Absolutely, and we do it without even thinking. And so did the Israelites. And I want to make sure we understand the 10 Commandments were not new to the Israelites.
Right.
They just hadn't kept them. They hadn't even been taught about the commandments. So the commandments started before this earth. I mean, God had to do this, and this was the commandments that were going to be, they're absolute. God can't change them any more than we can. That's why Jesus had to climb on that cross for me and you.
Okay, Sheila, answer me this question. When was Leviticus written? That was written after or before the Israelites escaped in the Exodus?
It was written after.
Okay. So they only had the Ten Commandments. They didn't have any other rules or regulations or anything like that.
No, those started to be given to Moses because he had probably close to 1 million+ people. 1 million+ people. I've gone camping a lot with the youth groups, and we've had sometimes 1,000.
Wow.
And if it is not run meticulously,
Yeah.
they go out of control pretty quick.
Yeah.
And there were already Egyptians that had come along with them that every time they turned around, they were kind of trying to sneak stuff in.
Yeah, I call that letting the inmates run the insane asylum.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. All right, Sheila Rushlaw is my guest today, and what does the Bible say about the Ten Commandments? And that'll be our program every day this week, except for, of course, tomorrow on Tuesday is when I've got Theo, the alumnus of the Dallas Theological Seminary, and we're on week 36 of our what's probably going to be about a 2.5 year study of Romans. And the reason that I've got Theo on is because, one, he's a alumnus of the Dallas Theological Seminary, but two, and you're never going to believe this, but it's true, he's memorized the book of Romans. Not a verse, not a chapter, the book. And so you can look forward to seeing that every Tuesday here on the View From A Pew, and we call it the Roman Road. Sheila is my guest today and will be all week long. What do you think are some of the biggest idols that people replace God with?
Well, sometimes people can replace God with things that are tangible things. You know, even like you said, your house can become your God, or your family. We have to be able to give up everything.
Yep.
And whether that's family or not, whether maybe you put your kids' education up on a pedestal. Maybe you put your loved one, your spouse, up on a pedestal. There's always
your pastor.
the TV. Your pastor,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we put them up there and we forget the poor guy or the poor woman. They're only human.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they make the same mistakes as the rest of us. And the thing about
All right, we're going to come back tomorrow, or Wednesday, and we're going to talk about taking his name in vain. And you're going to be surprised how I hear that, and I'll share that with you when we come back. I'm Mac McKoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. And thanks to Divine Christian Store. Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, 4 o'clock Central Standard Time on your local radio station. This is The View From A Pew, live here on YouTube, Facebook, and about 21 other places. If you have a certain podcast that you go to, different podcast channel or carrier or platform, just search for The View From A Pew. And if you don't find it, email me, and we'll get it on there for you. My email is simple. It's Mac, M-A-C, like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com. Mac, M-A-C, at theviewfromapew.com. So, today is Wednesday, and we're continuing with our special guest, Sheila Rushlaw. And the topic today is, what does the Bible say about blank? And on Monday, we talked about the first 2 commandments. Today, we're going to take on the 3rd commandment. Taking his name in vain is a no, 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 no. But what does that mean? And I don't know if you and I will agree on this because we haven't talked about it, right?
No, we have not.
Yeah, and I know some people are going to disagree with me, and I very well might be wrong. Yes, I admit it, again, but we'll see what we do today. All right, so first one was no other gods. Second is no idol worship. And the third is don't take his name in vain. Tell me where that is in the Bible and what it means.
We're in Exodus 20, and we are working with the commandments that go from Exodus 20, verses 3 through 17.
Okay.
And the first one was very demanding, I'm your God. The second one, he also lays in there how long these things can go if we don't obey. They can go to the 3rd and 4th generation, and it has a punishment.
Yeah.
But now we come to this.
Now, let me ask you this. So there was the lame man who sat by the pool, or the healing pool.
Yes.
And the Pharisees said, what did his parents do to get him to be like that? Is that kind of what that means? Because I think they discovered that his parents hadn't done anything, that it was just the way he was born. He was the way he was.
Yeah, and that's, it's when Christ performs a miracle, he's very selective with who he does.
Yeah.
And he had a backstory that he wanted put out about that event.
Yeah.
And he wanted people to understand.
It wasn't a curse.
It's not about what you do.
Yeah.
Or what your parents do. My kids are not necessarily going to fall away, but if I don't keep my faith in my home, then my children will start to drift away.
Yeah.
And that's what that 2nd commandment is discussing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on the 3rd?
Yep, ready to go.
Okay, Exodus 20, verse 7. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain.
And now, does it go on to explain what take his name in vain means, or do we just generally understand that?
We understand that, but it's also in Leviticus, also has that same thing, Leviticus 19:12, and you can see that same thing in Deuteronomy 6:13. And so there we're seeing where, so what is this about? Taking the name of the Lord and let me go out here and I'll make some enemies. Every time you OMG,
Yep.
you take the name's Lord in vain.
Yep, I agree.
Every time that you
GD.
every time you GD,
Yeah.
or every
JC.
time, yeah, every time you say, oh gosh, that when I was growing up, my grandmother, who was a very, very religious and pious woman, she used to tell us that when we would say, oh darn, or geez, or whatever, it's the way we say the word that makes it a swearing against God.
Okay.
And so we have all this, what she called religious swearing.
Right.
The cleaned up version, not saying all of those nasty words and letting it all be in your vocabulary.
Right.
But being so unaware of how your society brings that to you, and you don't fight it at all.
Sheila Rushaw is my guest today, and we're talking about the 3rd commandment. Okay, I'm probably going to sink my own battleship here, but I'm fortunate that I've not never, even before Jesus mugged me, I was not a person who would say GD, oh my G, JC, any of that stuff. But sounds like from what you said, I might be guilty, because I'll say, oh my heavens, or I'll say, gosh no, or I'll say, Jiminy Christmas. Am I in trouble there?
I think it's also the situation. When you say it as in a swear word, my husband hates when I say this, but it's the tone of your voice.
Right.
It's that which makes it or breaks it for me. We can say the word hell because hell is in the Bible and it's
Right.
something we discuss. And we can say damn because it's in the Bible and we have to discuss it. So it's the way we do it. It's the way we say it. It's what we mean in our mind and our heart when we say it.
Okay, but if I say, oh my heavens, I want to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back because most people wouldn't say that. They'd say, oh my, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing a good job because, I mean, everybody expects me to say G-O-D, but I don't. I say heavens. But I'm not that pure on that one, are I?
Well, I don't know. For me, I say, oh, my stars and garters.
Okay.
What does that even mean? Well, it's a very old saying, and it talks about the stars that are put up on a royal person's sash.
Yeah, yeah.
And then garters is the house of the garter or whatever over in England that becomes. And so, oh, my stars and garters has an affinity to that. Now, when I say that, I try to be careful what my attitude is. Who am I worshiping? Who am I thinking about? And that's what it is. We can say caca because God said caca. It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
But it's the way we say it. If we say it in a way that would hurt, think of Jesus as this tender reed. How can we hurt him when we're using language that doesn't edify him?
Yeah, when somebody says JC in front of me, I always raise my hand and say present, and they don't always get what I'm saying. And then when they do, they have a tendency of apologizing to me, and I say, I'm not offended. He is.
Right.
Don't worry about me. You can't offend me with GD or any of that stuff. But you better know, I always say two things, or three things. If you don't know God's name, he knows yours. Number two, God hears everything you do. And number three is God reads Facebook.
And God is in every breath we breathe.
Yeah.
Because his name in the Old Testament was Yahweh.
Yeah.
And when you breathe, your breath can sound.
Yep. Yep.
So that exhalation, inhalation actually kind of sounds like that.
Yeah, it does.
And so he's in us every time.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
All right. So what about those four-letter words that we shouldn't say because society has deemed them offensive? The four-letter word for feces. Mm-hmm. The four-letter word for making whoopee. Those kind of words. Do they fall under this third commandment?
They do.
Oh, I didn't want you to say that.
Yeah, they do. They fall under here. They fall quite well under here. Are we, and it's always going back to, are we edifying God when we speak? I always used to tell my kids, they'd get around other kids and they'd start swearing.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'd say,
yeah.
You know what? Every swear word you say reduces what people think your intelligence is.
Yep, that's true.
If you can't speak things clearly and give things clearly without adding all of these nasty whatevers, people, they may laugh looking at you, but they're not laughing with you most of the time. And you find that out much later behind your back.
Okay, so I hate to ask this question because I'm going to be guilty again, I bet. And by the way, as I told you before, Sheila and I have not talked about this. I don't talk to my guests about the particulars of what we're going to talk about. My word for that is I will say feces. Now, why should someone be offended by that?
It's not whether someone is, it's whether Jesus is.
And he's offended by...
He wants us to control our emotions.
Yeah.
He doesn't want us. That's the way he was. He was strong, steady, and smooth from his birth to the cross. No matter what was hitting him from the outside, he stayed in this very straight path. And I think if you think it's a swear word, or if it's questioning in your mind, then bingo, you have your answer.
Well, okay, and I don't disagree with you. Here would be my complaint on that people choose to be offended. I understand that saying the Lord's name in vain and those things, I completely agree with you. That's just wrong. I don't like it in movies. I don't like it on TV. It's like you said before. Really? That's the best you can write for right there in that?
And not only that, our children don't know what some of these things mean.
Yeah.
They don't even go back to where this originated from. And if parents would do a study on the four-letter word that starts with S, you know, there's so many of them, but if they would go back and study where these things came from, they would be appalled that they were letting their children have that come out of their mouths.
Oh, okay. Do you know where the F word came from?
Yes.
Okay. Why is that a swear word? That was actually a synonym.
Acronym.
Thank you. An acronym for a law.
Yes.
That the king had. And then they made up this, they just put the letters together, and that's what it spelled.
Yes. And that it was also very popular law on naval ships.
Okay.
And that was because there were not females in the Navy except for the last few years.
Yeah.
So on a ship like that, when that event would happen, two lonely male sailors would do things that God didn't. There was a law that said for unlawful carnal knowledge.
Oh, I had never heard. That's not the one I was talking about. I was talking about when Henry the Eighth wanted to get divorced and married again,
Mm-hmm.
and the Pope wouldn't let him. He put a law in called fornication under the consent of the king, and you actually had to get a license to be able to do that. I thought that's where that word came from.
And it's probably a little bit of both of those, that the naval military would use that, maybe because that was already something that came up, but they put that on for two men who were at sea, and our kids say it so readily, but they say it in the nastiest way possible.
Yeah, they do. All right, so that's going to be our Wednesday show. When we come back tomorrow, we will be taking a look at some of the other commandments and how those came around and why they are the commandments. I'm Mac McKoy, if I haven't told you lately. Thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you here on The View from a Pew.